Alright everyone, we are going to start in about 15 minutes. If anybody has any questions, please chat in the chat box below, and I'll try to get them answered before class begins, but we are starting soon. I will say, if you guys like this video and you'd like to support me, I do have links to my Patreon and the channel, underneath my channel, and links to tipping services, so if you enjoy this kind of content and you'd like to see more of it, that's one way of going about doing so, and I'd be deeply humbled by anything that anybody would like to give. But of course, content on YouTube is free, so if you guys are enjoying the video and you can't support us in that kind of way, just show us some kindness by giving us a like or leaving a comment and telling us what you thought, and that just does just as well as the donations. So, but I do appreciate other kinds of donations too. So that if something that you want to try to do, then definitely open to it, and that'll help support me in going forward in the future. So, but I won't ask about it again. So, just wanted to put that out there. But I do appreciate you guys tuning in, and thank you for being part of the channel. We're gonna go ahead and we're not gonna have. Oops. We're not gonna have we're not gonna have the little subscriber goal up there, but I do have it just hidden, so nothing's in the way of learning. So kind of gonna be different, but hope you guys enjoy the lesson. And once again, guys, if you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll answer them before class starts. There will also be time to ask questions at the end of class. So once we're done with the lesson, we will open it up for questions, and I'll get them all answered if I can. If I have to research them, we'll research them, try to answer them live. And might make this a monthly thing. Might do a monthly lesson, so we'll see. But everyone seemed to. I think only one person voted no, so I really appreciate the support, because this is my passion. So, but we had 6 concurrent viewers a little while ago, which is awesome. But I told everybody to go and come back at 5 o'clock, so hopefully they'll be back. But yeah, grab some popcorn. This is mostly just for you guys to sit back and relax. If you guys are wanting to be virtual students for real, you can get a pen and paper, take down some notes if you'd like to. I will try to give you time to write notes if we have any note writers. Otherwise, if you're watching this after it's gone live, just pause the video and take notes that way if you'd like to. But everything I'm going to say basically is going to be on the screen. So, but I will go off script and talk a little bit more about stuff. So, this took me about 3.5 days to make. So I worked on it this week. Everything I wanted to basically say, I kind of had it in my head and kind of just made it that way. But I'll be nevertheless, I'll be submitting this for a grade. I may even include a video link in to my professor. We'll see. Welcome to class, Purple Potato Cat. Stick with us for a couple minutes. Class is starting in about 10 minutes, so if you want to pop in and pop out, in 10 minutes we'll start. We're going to probably start right on the dime, so maybe come back in about 8 minutes or so you don't miss anything. But if you want to just put this on in the background and go get yourself a snack or something like that, then that way you don't miss anything for sure. And thanks for tuning in. Hey, welcome to I almost said welcome to stream. Welcome to class, Elijah. Thanks for tuning in. If you guys want to get started on some, if you want to interact with the lesson this kind of way, if you guys would like to be part of the lesson, like interactive, like kind of like pretending like you're actually my students, if you guys want to take time from now until we start lesson to write down some of your ideas and thoughts about evolution and kind of what you think about it and what maybe people have told you about it or what your understanding about it is. And then as we go through the lesson, kind of write down if your opinion's changed or if based on the information that I'm going to give you guys, if you've been able to like form a new opinion. But that's something that we would do for a real class, so I'm going to have you guys do it. But if you want to, just on your smartphone or however you want to do it, write down kind of like what your, we call this like your predisposition, what your initial thoughts and ideas are about evolution and kind of what your opinions are on it before lesson. But yeah, we're going to start in 8 minutes, so got a pretty good crowd. I'm very pleased. Thank you guys. So most of my viewers are already in school, so if you're watching and you're not in school but you'd like to, sorry, hold on. If you guys would like to take notes on it, then you can for sure. If you're wanting to learn about evolution and you're watching this video after it's gone live, notes are encouraged if you'd like to take them. But we'll have everything on screen for you, and I'll try to stay on script, but I may go off of it just to add extra information. Question in chat says, how blobfish evolve? I wonder why fish go so deep. No questions are dumb. It's a good question. I would say it's probably for competition reasons. So, not very many organisms populate super deep in the ocean. So, there's a vacuum for a niche there. So my guess would probably be to occupy a niche that nothing else is occupying, and they can get all the resources that it's able to get. Also, there's lots of scavengers that feed off the bottom. So before life evolved to be down that deep, there was all this dead animal matter. It's like basically free food for anything to kind of take and eat. And the pressures of like, trying to find a niche drove things to kind of change in a way that allowed them to go deeper and deeper until they could actually exist at the bottom. And they had access to food that not other creatures could get to. So it'd be for competition, would be my answer. Good question. Thank you, Constantine, for the question. Yes. Yes, they are. Because they're not needed at the bottom. But there's not pressures to get rid of them. So they just are basically a non-functional organ. But since you can't really select for it or against it, they stayed. Bye, Elijah. Remember that you can always watch this video after it's gone live. We'll have the video link posted. Sorry I had to go, buddy, but happy to see you. Glad you could tune in. No, you're good. We haven't run out of time yet. We still have time for more questions if anybody has questions. I'm gonna drink my coffee while I'm waiting for people to ask questions. And as you can notice, we don't have chat on screen, so I am able to see chat, but I'm not going to respond to it unless it's a question. And I'll pause and we can answer the question together. And I may not have an answer for it, guys. I'm new to teaching, so I may not have an answer for it, but we will try to look up an answer and find out. I don't really have a favorite crab. Actually, no. It's a shrimp. Favorite crab. I guess whichever one's biggest. Maybe like the Alaskan crab. Or the king crab, pardon me. Not Alaskan, king crab. Okay, we have 3 minutes. So hopefully we can get some more people to pop in. Yeah, it's correct, TCG. We're gonna talk about that for a little bit. Very good. Well, he didn't. I don't think he discovered them. No, he didn't discover them, but he did go there, and that's where he made the theory. Yes, that is correct. That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. No, many things have gone away from that kind of body plan and solution to problems, and it's kind of like hold on one second. We'll answer that in a second. There's something favorable about the crustacean's body plan that is seems to be a winning solution. It kind of feels like a perfect not perfect, but it feels like a really good niche where it's able to be really successful. I mean, if that's what if only people with crabby features survive, then that's how that usually works. Purple Potato Cat asked, do you think human evolution will ever be able to keep up with technology? No. I think we're going to subvert evolution with CRISPR, things like that, where we can modify ourselves and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But, okay. It was good while it's lasting. Alright, guys, we're going to get started. Thank you guys for tuning in. And if you're watching this after it's gone live and you'd like to support the channel, you can go about that by looking at our Patreon and looking at our the Streamlabs link to support me directly if you'd like to do so. And if you're not able to do that but you still like the video, hope you consider subscribing or leaving us a like and letting us know that we want to do this some more. as I might make this a monthly thing if I'm able to do so. So, without further ado, let's get started. And obviously today we're talking about evolution. So let's get right into it. Adaptation and speciation via the process of evolution. So before we talk about stuff, I kind of want to get out of the way what evolution doesn't cover and what it's not about. So evolution is not a alternative belief system to Christianity. It is a scientific theory, and being scientific theory, it's testable. You cannot test religion or Christianity, so Christianity doesn't fall within the realms of science, and the same way as that, evolution isn't trying to undo Christianity or prove it wrong. It's not the goal. The goal is trying to explain natural phenomenon. It's also not involved with the origin of life or the universe. Those are other theories. So some people say that evolution is about life coming from nothing. That's a different theory. So it's not involved with evolution. And people that try to persuade you to think so are mistaken themselves. Like I said earlier, it's not out to prove or disprove the absence or existence of a God. So it's focused on trying to find out how life's able to become plentiful and diverse. So, and so yeah, it's kind of just getting all those things, because that's some of the misconceptions people have about evolution is all these things. It's also not about humans coming from fish or monkeys. So the whole the pictures that are commonly associated with evolution, or at least popular media, is the ape becoming a man. That's a different theory, and evolution doesn't work that way. We branched off from it was a branching event. It wasn't a direct line of succession. So things in evolution branch and divide. They don't straight line. So things usually, they can, but things usually go in a branching pathway and not a straight line. So it's a misconception, and it's kind of a way to show how species became more man-like, but we're a separation off of, well, they change all the time. It's just if they change enough, or if those changes are important enough that it gives them a leg up on the competition, so that way those changes get kept, and then on and on and on. Eventually, they'll be different enough where you can say, oh, there's a different species. But usually things will change if they need to, because they need to go to a different location, or they need to be able to survive a different climate or different location. So usually they'll change that way for that reason. But it won't be if there's nothing pressuring change. So if an animal, for instance, I'll give you the instance of like the American crocodile. If nothing's pushing, if there's nothing wrong, basically evolution says if it's not broke, don't fix it. So if the there's no pressure for the crocodile to change, like it's not having issues anywhere, it's not going to change. And that's how some species are able to stay unchanged for such a long time, because there's not any pressure for it to change. And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so I asked some of you that were here earlier, take some time, about 5 minutes if you can, if you'd like to, and if you want to skip this part, you can pause the video and we'll continue on. But if you're watching at home after it's gone live, just pause the video for a second, take some time to think about this, and then we'll continue on. But this part is for a actual classroom. But I do want you guys to think in your head about how you already view evolution, and how it works, and then fill out basically like what your current standpoint is on it, and then we'll move on. So go ahead and pause the video if you're watching this after it's gone live, and then we'll play it, and then we'll continue. Okay, so the most common misconception about evolution is that it's just a theory. And people that think this way view the word theory as like an idea or as just a hunch, when in science a theory is a very strongly supported, strongly researched topic that has a bunch of backing, has a lot of backing, and basically is so good that it has not been disproven. So, scientific theory and just a theory, completely different. But people in the public view it as it's just an idea, but it really is not just an idea. 1 second, let me take a drink. Another thing, people said that they don't like it, so they're not going to study it. They don't want to learn about it because it goes against their religion. Again, like I said in the beginning, evolution nowhere says that any kind of God exists or doesn't exist. It's totally separate. And in fact, you are able to have a belief in a higher power and still recognize that the evidence supports evolution, and the evidence is very, very strong. So, but a lot of people will turn away from it because they have the perception that it's going to interfere with their religion, or it goes against it, like it's like anti-religion. People think that people believe in evolution. You either see the evidence and you recognize it and you accept it, or you choose to ignore the facts that are out there, and you choose to ignore the work that scientists have done. There's no believing. Like, it's kind of like the same thing of saying, like, oh, I don't believe in gravity. Well, you can think that and say that all you want to, but gravity's still working on you. So it's just humans have weird ways about going about things, but people think that there are evolutionist believers, and there's not. Another one is evolution says everything came from bacteria. We do have a common eukaryotic cell ancestor, but everything coming from bacteria is a very, it's just a not fully correct way of saying it. It's half baked, really. But we do have, if you go back far enough, there is a common eukaryotic ancestor for things, and then things split off, and they change, and they occupy new niches and become more complex. But it wasn't a straight path, and people think that evolution happens in a straight line, and it does not. It's very meandering. People say that evolution's been debunked because of DNA. Actually, it's couldn't be any more the opposite. DNA really supports evolutionary theory because we're able to sequence things and find out that we've got this shared ancestry through our shared code in DNA. So it's really not like I said, people that try to tell you that or think that are greatly misled, and they're trying to tell you to not accept what science is finding. Some species are more evolved than others, so thinking that humans are more evolved than our primate relatives, is incorrect thinking. The primate's position occupies a certain niche and it occupies a certain role, and we occupy a different role. So we both, because typically you can't have two species with the same niche in the same place for any length of time, or one's going to go extinct. So to think that we're more evolved Now, we might be more cognitively, we have greater capacity for cognition, for thinking, but that's a different, the evolution of the mind is a whole different lecture, but we're just gone in a different direction. So we're able to, we're more advanced than them as far as society and tool usage and our cognitive capacity, but we're not more evolved or less evolved. Certain grasses have gone through more renditions of evolution than we've gone through. They've changed more times and done more things. So if you want to look at it that way, grass is more evolved than we are, but that's not the correct way of looking at it. Correct. Very good. Good discussion in the chat. Yes, people really do think that DNA disproves evolution, and it's kind of silly. Another one that people think, and a lot of these I'm actually pulling from my personal experience for the people have said to me. But another one is evolution can't be real because things don't evolve into other things, they get old and they die. So for some reason, people out there also think that evolution is supposed to happen in a single lifetime of an individual. That's complete balderdash. It's such a flagrant non-truth. It's almost like a slap in the face. It's very insulting, to me at least. So yeah, it's just not true, and we can't see evolution happening through our. Well, actually, we can. We'll talk about it later, but we can't see the grander mechanisms of evolution playing out because our lifespan is a flash in the pan. It's not even existent in the terms of like geological time, which is where evolution takes place in. So another thing is evolution is always making things better, quote unquote, and towards a goal. Evolution has no goal. Evolution is only concerned with the things that can survive the current conditions are going to survive. The ones that cannot survive the current conditions are going to be wiped away. And whatever's left that's still surviving will have to endure the current conditions. And if the conditions change, because they always are changing, whatever suits the current condition in the future is going to be the surviving thing. So things are always changing, and nature has to change with it or become destroyed. And the list goes on and on. So we can make a quiz. No, I'm kidding. So, okay, before we get into this, I looked up some good quotes. And another one is, evolution is the thing that makes biology make sense. If you don't teach your students evolution, you're making it harder for them. So my goal is to get this lesson in the beginning of semester. So you guys, or my students in the future, are going to have this as their bedrock. So they can understand biology happens through evolution and because of evolution. And the pressures and the forces that are working are what drive everything. And it's not just, a one-off topic that happens at the end of the semester. This is something that kind of influences everything. And nothing makes sense in biology except through the light of evolution, which is another great quote. So I want to put those on there. As everybody probably already knows, Charles Darwin is the founder of evolution, and they did so in 1858. So this theory has been having research done on it since the 1850s, and it's not been disproven yet. So that's pretty good. And it's one of the most studied theories out there outside of physics. I mean, physics, you've got all kinds of things that are being studied constantly, but people are still studying evolution and doing experiments, and it's not coming up wrong. That's the thing about science that makes it so good, is that if you find evidence that disproves evolution, that's been conducted on the scientific method, we have to dismiss evolution as not true or as false. But that has not happened yet. So that's kind of like the reassurance that we have, is because this is such an old theory, relatively, that it's got a ton of evidence backing it. He originally called it descent with modification. So that's kind of one of the things I was talking about. Is as things change, those small changes get passed on, and we can only ever work with what we've already got from our ancestors. So that's why things move in a particular fashion. That's why people think that evolution is going towards more complex. It's going towards more kind of it's going towards more intricacy. So things that are more simple started out in the beginning, and as time went on, more systems were kind of put into place, and over time things change. But we only work with what we got, and that'll be something that we talk about later in the lecture. Obviously, Darwin published his book, The Origin of Species, in 1859. And he developed, I think, well, somebody said this earlier, he developed the theory while exploring the Galapagos Islands. He was studying the finches there. And, that's fine. And, sorry, TCG, yes, you may. And, while he was exploring the islands, he noticed that there was this variation amongst these finches on different islands. So some of them had bigger beaks, some of them had thinner beaks, some of them had shorter beaks, some of them had longer beaks. And they were such different designs or different characteristics that essentially it was mind-boggling for him that the diversity was there, because it's a remote island, so a small group of birds at some point probably traveled there, and it was probably one species, more than likely, more likely than not. And how do you end up with all these different kinds of birds whenever only one type of bird flew over there? So how is this happening? And the answer is the answer that he thought up is basically what we're talking about, where things will change because there's variations in populations, and whatever's the best to solve the problems of getting food and being able to reproduce, whatever's able to do that the most effectively is going to survive, and the ones that can't won't. And what you end up with is things that are much better suited for their environment than others in the proper area. So but yeah, adaptation occurred because of the demands of the environment. There's been other similar theories from the ancient Romans and the Greeks, and from the Islamic culture and Chinese before Darwinism, but they were in competition with Christianity at the time, and they weren't given any real validity, so they never took root, if you will. Some of them were that humans are made of like body parts that were scattered across the world, and the body parts, like the different features, wandered around until they assembled. But it's kind of silly ideas of where diversity came from. I believe he also studied the tortoises as well, but the finches were his the greatest kind of apple of his eye. It caught the most attention because of how like stunningly different they were. And finches were easier to study because they're small, but that's also a thing. So we're gonna talk about the 4 drivers that kind of make evolution work. So before we talk about that, I want to get this kind of in the forefront of your mind. Like I said earlier, evolution does not occur in a single lifetime of an individual or even in 10. It happens over millions of years. So, I said this earlier, but one of the misconceptions is that things change, or things don't change and evolve because they get old and die. Well, that's not how evolution works, and we're going to talk about why. But this is further stating that. But talking about the age of the Earth, so the Earth's been around for about 4.5 billion years. So that's an unfathomably long amount of time. And in that time, and we've been able to identify this because of how isotopes decay. So the oldest rocks that we've on record that we found is that age, and that's how we were able to date the Earth. I believe the Moon also has similar isotopes of that age, which would indicate that it came from the Earth. Like the Earth got hit by an asteroid, and part of it fell off, and it became the Moon. Something to that effect. But the earliest life on Earth has been found about 3.7 billion years ago. So for almost the entire time that we've had the Earth around, since the start of the universe, we've had life on Earth. So only for about like 1 and some change have we had no life. And that's because of the conditions at the forefront of the universe's existence. So, but yeah, life's been here for billions of years, and in that time, the primary drivers that we're going to talk about have been doing work. So we're going to talk about the first driver of evolution is going to be natural selection. It's commonly thought as its own thing or as the only driver. But there are 3 others. Natural selection is responsible for basically being the filter that life has to pass through. So there are abiotic and biotic factors. So if you think about the biotic factors, it would be like predation and disease would be a factor. Things that are going to take life out are going to be like disease and predation, things like that. And the abiotic factors are going to be like the temperature of the climate, earthquakes, natural disasters, things that are going to take life. And basically, if you're not fit enough to survive, you're not going to make it. But these conditions that we find creatures in is like the determiner of if it's fit or not. So if it can't live and grow to be old enough to reproduce, then it's not fit. So it has to deal with other creatures competing for limited resources and being able to live to find a mate and pass on, and then it's done its job. But we've got these diagrams here. So it shows, and this is kind of like a rapid situation where you can see kind of at least a change in the genotype or in the traits of a species. You can see it happening rather quickly. The example here is the bird. And you got the mice, and the ones that are light colored. That's one way of looking at it, TCG. But in a way, yes. Kind of, yes, you're not wrong. But as you can see, the light mice in the middle picture, there's only 2 of them left because they're easier to get spotted. So the trait that's favorable would be the dark mouse. So once all these mice reproduce again, there's only a couple of the light-colored mice left, and the rest of them are going to be all dark-colored. So that's going to be kind of... this is going to be like location dependent. So if there's like a darker ground color or a darker environment in a certain region, that's going to be the favorable type of trait. And then if it were to snow, the tables are flipped. So if it were to snow on that region, then basically what's going to happen is you're going to have very, very few dark mice and a lot of the lighter color ones. So this can all change in the blink of an eye if there's a condition change. So that's what I mean by how things are always changing and they're always in flux, and things tend to go backwards and forwards because they're just the tables are always turning, so things are always kind of just changing. Yeah, so evolution is always one step behind the environment, is what I'm trying to say. And it's always like the needle keeps moving. So, yeah, with natural selection, it's not always the best that makes it. It's the one that's most adapted for the current environment and the current moment in time. So, let me use my mouse here. You've got the ancestor finch, one of Darwin's finches, that came to the island, and then they spread out throughout the islands, and the ones that had this beak shape where there was more insects got to have this beak because it's the best for reaching the insects, and the other ones didn't make it. And then ones where there was more wooded environment where it's easier to get the insects if you can peck at it, peck at the tree. These ones were the ones that made it the most. And then you've got the ones that were for ground foraging. So they're all trying to occupy different roles. And they do this because there's only so much insects in a tree. There's only so many seeds in the ground. So if they all did the same thing, then there's not enough food to go around. So they change for the purpose of occupying a food source that has not been tapped into yet. They're always trying to find a unique place where they can have access to resources that haven't been touched by other things. Okay, second one. The second primary driver is going to be mutation. This one's a big one. It's a small one, but it's a big one. So when I say it's small, the changes that happen because of mutations are very small. So only about one letter of the DNA has an error at a time. So it's only like a one letter change, and that happens whenever we make copies of our DNA, and that'll be discussed in a different lecture. But there's a process where the DNA is going to make a copy of itself, and as it's copying, mistakes occur, and that mistake is called a mutation. But and specifically, that one letter mistake is called like a point mutation or a single point mutation. And there's different types, so we'll talk about this in a second. But there's the substitution, where it's a direct swap. There's the insertion, where you add an extra one where there's not supposed to be one. There's a deletion, where one gets lost. And then there's the inversion, where the sequence gets flipped around. And that would be like a multiple point mutation. And that gets into a little bit more genetics. But essentially, mutation is a source of alteration or unique sequences in DNA code that could be advantageous or disadvantageous for a given moment in time, or it could do nothing. And most of the time, our mutations that we have don't do anything. They're not positive, they're not negative, but most of the time, it's actually pretty funny. Most of the time, mutations are going to be neutral, they're not going to do anything, or they're going to be negative. So, it's very rarely that a mutation is going to give them a leg up, but whenever it does, it's a pretty big deal. And that leg up is going to be what causes a new trait, or it has to be the right thing at the right time. So, like I say, it's very rare, but that's what causes these new features to form. And if the new features are allowing them to access food better, or find a mate better, or survive the conditions at the current time, then that's going to be the ticker, and that's what's going to be what gets passed on, and that's how we eventually get new species. It's from enough of the right things at the right time. They get passed on and they get accumulated. So, and eventually you can wind up with a new species. But that's why the importance of knowing that this happens over such a long extent of time is so important. Because these seem like such small little things, but if you have millions of years for it to accumulate, if things have millions of years to accumulate these small changes, then it's very feasible. So these are important. They're not the main cause, but they are important because it gives rise to new characteristics. And this is the only way. This is the only way that we get new characteristics, is from mutation. So everything else is just reshuffling the genetic deck, if you think about it that way. It's just moving things around. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But they can be passed on and inherited, and the mutation accumulates, like I said. Mutation occurs when the DNA pair... Yeah, we discussed this already. So, this is what makes us... I don't want to say better. Okay, so I think TCG talked about... if we're talking about reproduction and mating, yes. So this is where we're talking about it. Mutations as well as genetic recombination is what gives eukaryotic and sexually reproducing things the leg up on bacteria and other things that just clone themselves. So mutations make individuals unique, and the uniqueness of individuals gives the entire race or the entire species a better chance of survival when faced with random chaos or random events that happens. So if you've got a couple of individuals or a handful of individuals that have these advantageous mutations, they're going to be able to survive, the species can live on, and they're able to reproduce. Whereas if everybody was all the same, and then a disaster hits, everyone's going to get taken out the same way. So that's why mutations are super important. They make us unique. So third one is gene flow. This one's important, but also keep in mind it's important when this doesn't happen. So it can happen, and it can also be prevented from happening. So I'm gonna go off on a tangent for a quick second. So what happened with the Galapagos birds is they didn't, or when they're on their islands, there was a lack of gene flow. So these populations were separated for a long period of time, and because they weren't intermingling, all the mutations and all the changes that were occurring separately from each other all kind of compiled and added up. And what happens is they started as the same species, but over time what happens is that they become different in different ways, more and more and more, until eventually you wouldn't be able to tell that this species was originally another species. So that's what you would have, like a speciation event, where there's a founding population and they're separated from each other for a long period of time, like millions of years. And because of that separation, they can go in different directions, and you have a branching event where one species becomes two, and they occupy different roles. So, but we're talking about when gene flow does occur. But it's important to know when gene flow doesn't occur, we can wind up with a new species. Pardon me, hold on. Sorry, I've been talking a lot, hold on. Okay, so gene flow, the process by which genetic information between separate populations is mixed through random mating. So To someone's question, if we could evolve still, yes. What would have to happen is if we didn't have random mating with other populations. So if let's say if we ever made it this far, if a small island like Hawaii, um, people weren't able to leave or come in for millions of years, then potentially what you could have, if the conditions are right and there are demands for, let's say, I think it's something crazy. Let's say if there's a predator that exists that we can't tackle, and it can only attack like people with certain characteristics. Well, eventually the people without those characteristics aren't going to be around anymore. So like, if you were like, trying to think. This is probably a bad example, but I'm trying to think of a good one. Essentially, if there was a condition where we were separated for a long period of time, humans were, and we weren't able to intermate with other populations, and there was some kind of like crazy predator that could only see like certain pigmentation. Whatever had the pigmentation that the predator could see would obviously get picked off and eliminated. But the ones who had different pigmentations that weren't able to be seen would survive. So that would be like, and then eventually you could have a species or have a different species where they have like blue skin or something. Let's just say for the heck of it. But that would take super duper long, and it would have to have the pressures would have to be not changing. But it's possible. It's possible. It just takes so long for it to happen. And humans are kind of volatile, so I don't know if we're going to make it millions of years. But who knows? Okay. So that's kind of a tangent, but I wanted to kind of... Yes, it could happen to people, too. We're not immune from evolution. So... Yeah, we did say this earlier. So if populations are separated by physical barriers, then the gene flow between populations is impossible, and two species may result over time if conditions are right. So, usually we're going to see it with animals, because humans are able to get around. We're able to travel great distances. So we're kind of subverting our own evolution. So, when an individual can migrate to another population and mate with an individual from a different population, those genes are mixed. So that's why it means That's what it means by gene flow. Is that the genes are going to go from one area, they can flow into the other area, and it kind of keeps all the genes that are available between all the populations. It kind of keeps them in circulation. Kind of like money, a little bit like money. So a little bit of genes from one population, like population A, can make it over to population B, and you have a little bit of mixing. So there's still... It kind of keeps new species from happening a little bit. And that's just a natural result of things. Okay, so the third one... No, this is the last one. This is the last one, I apologize. We got too into it. The last driver is going to be called genetic drift. And, this is whenever a population goes through... It's true. This one... So, here's a good example. This is a good example. Let's say we go to Mars. And we only send... And this wouldn't happen, but if we only sent certain kinds of people to Mars... and they were left on their own for millions of years... What's going to happen is whoever can survive Mars the best, and whatever traits they have that can survive Mars the best, eventually they could become different from us. It's true. So that eventually they could become different from us. in pretty interesting ways. Like they may adapt to have maybe like a super dark pigment so they can get more sunlight because Mars is further away, or they have like a different eye color to see better. But the problem is we have technology that basically makes evolution no longer affecting us. So, the technology kind of is the circumventer to evolution. Because we don't need to have different eyes or different eye shapes to see, we just use a flashlight. So, that's kind of what we're going to stagnate. But, okay. So, basically, think about what would happen if like zombie apocalypse happens and let's say everybody except for people in Utah make it. So only people in Utah are alive. People in Utah are all, well, not all of them, but they're typically only a certain, I don't want to become people in Utah are pretty similar to each other. There's not a whole lot of ethnic diversity in Utah. Nothing against Utah. That's just how it is. For certain reasons, there is diversity, but it's less. Okay, that's why I'm using Utah as an example. But what's going to happen is if that population is cut off from the rest of the world, what's going to happen is there's less variety of genetics in that area. So what's going to happen is there's going to start to become we're going to start to have like birth defects, or disease is going to be more detrimental because they're all the same. And this is saying if there wasn't any antibiotics, because it's the the end of the world. So there's no antibiotics. People aren't making them anymore. Their natural immunity is going to be less because there's not as much variety there. So an example that isn't with people would be the natural population of cheetahs. So don't remember when it happened, but let's just say back in the 80s for the sake of a story. Yes, it does. That's true. So that's another good one. So with royalty and with the Egyptians too, there was they didn't want the royals, people of royalty, to marry non-royals. So it's the old saying of keep it in the family, keep the royalty in the family, because they didn't want to have to share power and share wealth. What happened, as Purple Potato Cat's very wisely saying, that essentially there was birth defects, and they weren't able to keep doing that because any children that they had from that would have like 5 arms, or have like 2 heads, or have like, they were born without where you do your business. They are born without that. They're born sterile. All these crazy problems, and then they'd end up either the baby wouldn't make it to term, or they would end up dying very young as 1 or 2 years older, or like at like 10 weeks, even. So and this happened in real life with the cheetahs, and it happens with a lot of species too. But the cheetahs almost went extinct in Africa, and there was safeguards put in place by us to quit poaching, and the numbers came back. But the problem is that there's really bad birth defects and all kinds of issues with cheetahs. So the population has rebounded into greater numbers, but their diversity of the variety of their genes is been reduced so much that basically one bad virus or one bad illness could take the whole population out. So they'd have to get incredibly lucky to have those new mutations and new genetic differences kind of happen over time. but it's really like shooting yourself in the foot. It's really bad. So the Mars example, to avoid genetic drift, what we would as humans would do is you'd send a bunch of different people from different ethnicities. They kind of represent the world platter, if you will, as far as the options of genes that are out there. And that's good. We need to have that because otherwise we'd have genetic drift. So eventually, that's why they would pick people from different backgrounds to go into space to colonize Mars. It's to prevent this from happening. Because it would happen eventually if you had all Caucasians or all any ethnicity really. So back to this, resulting smaller population is going to be has a dramatically diminished gene pool. Here's what I said. It's going to cause birth defects, mutations, and weakness to disease. So boom, there you go. There you have it. Kind of already discussed that a little bit. And it can lead to extinction down the line. Oh, welcome to class, Atomic. What's going on? New person. We are discussing evolution. Feel free to take notes if you'd like to. The Big Bird. Huh? Big Bird. He's the last of his kind. And Tigger too. This stream will be available to watch in its entirety after it's gone live. So if you want to come back or watch live now and come back and catch the beginning, you get the whole picture that way. Feel free to do so. But we'll try to do these educational streams about once a month. So to end this slide, basically, if we have a bottleneck, it really stunts the potential for the species to survive, and it can go extinct because of it. So, but this is called a bottleneck event, and it looks like that. Or it's called that because it looks like that. You go down in diversity, and then it comes back out again. So it bottlenecks. Scientists try to make things simple. We're going to go back into this again, but the most common descent to evolution. Welcome back, Tutoru. We're about halfway through. But remember, you can always watch the video after it's gone live by watching it in my live stream category. I will make a educational video category, so you guys can watch it at your leisure. The most common descent to evolution is that it's just a theory, so it doesn't hold very much credibility. Oh. That does happen. That does happen sometimes. But I've not heard of that one. But I'm not surprised. Very specific events can cause that. But the just a theory caveat, we kind of discussed that at the beginning of the lecture. But I will say, people that do say this don't really understand. Oh, thanks, Tutoru. People that say this don't really understand what a scientific theory is. And we're going to kind of go into more evidence for it. So, essentially, they're under the influence that theory just means idea or hypothesis, when it couldn't be further from the truth. In science, a theory is going to be a well-established way of explaining something that goes about explaining an aspect of nature, but it's backed by evidence from many tests and experiments. So we're going to go into some examples of what theories are. So, for example, and people don't think of it this way, but for example, the heliocentric theory is the theory that the sun is at the center of the solar system. But how many of you think that's just a theory, that the sun's at the center of the solar system? Now, it used to actually be debated hundreds of years ago. People thought that the Earth was at the center of the solar system and not the sun. They thought that the Earth was actually at the center of the universe. But because of research and evidence from experimentation, we were able to find that the geocentric theory is been debunked. So people do not debate, at least they shouldn't debate, that the sun is at the center of the solar system today. So that's one example of a theory. The other example is the atomic theory that states that all matter is comprised of atoms. This too is not debated but accepted as a fact. So my question for you guys is that why do people say evolution's just a theory, and yet atomic theory and the heliocentric theory are not disputed or even debated? Well, the answer is because it interferes with people's ideas about religion, but they need to be given the truth, which is that this has been heavily tested, and there's all kinds of lines of evidence that support this scientific theory of evolution. So we're going to go into them. But back to the slides. The theory of evolution has been under study since 1859, meaning that for almost 200 years, scientists have been researching this and relentlessly examining it across many different fields. And there's significant evidence from genetics, comparative anatomy, paleontology, molecular biology, and biogeography that that essentially all have different lines of evidence that support this. And we're going to go into a couple of them in a couple minutes. So, it has been established as a firmly supported scientific theory and fact. Due to the extensive research conducted, scientists no longer dispute the fundamental principles of evolution. Yet the public still does. But we'll move on. I don't want to beat a dead horse. So, how do we know? Answers from genetics. So by studying the DNA of different species, scientists are able to classify organisms by the similarity to one another. So that's how we're able to find that we've got genetic relatives, like the primates and other things, and that their DNA is very close to ours, meaning that somewhere along the line, there's a common ancestor, and due to pressures, due to the factors we talked about, the separation factor, or the mutation factor, or bottleneck, or the lack of a bottleneck, or the lack of gene flow, that there was changes that happened that caused us to branch off and become a different thing. But we still share commonalities with those ancestors. So, for instance, all humans on Earth share about 99.9% of each the DNA that we have with each other, meaning that the DNA that makes you is only 0.1%. When you think about how different we look like from each other, how different we sound, how different, their musculature are built. People have different. Some people are born very short. Some people are born and grow up to be very tall. So all that variety comes from 0.1%, which is incredible. Meaning that not a lot of DNA does a lot of work for us. So even dogs, the canine, has 94% of our genetic code that we share. This is because, you think about it, we're both warm-blooded. We both have hair, although dogs have fur. We have body hair. We both live birth, and they carry internally. There's no eggs. And mothers produce milk. We both have 2 eyes, teeth, and the list goes on. Different body parts that we share in common. So all the instructions about making those body parts, and we're both four-limbed animals, vertebrates, yada, yada, yada. Let's go on. So, 94% of that genetic code, only 6% is what separates. Blah, 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 sorry. 6% of diversity, 6% of our DNA is what is enough to change the instruction to say make a dog to make a person. So not a lot of DNA does the heavy lifting. But yeah, exactly. So we're all brothers and sisters, if you think about it evolutionarily speaking. So science is actually a really good way to become a humanitarian if you know about the genetics. Because why are we so mean to each other whenever we're 99.9% the same? Anyway, I digress. Cows have 80% in common with us, so we're getting further away. Even bananas, a plant, has 60% similarity to humans, which is absolutely crazy. You wouldn't think that, but it has to do with because we're both eukaryotic. We're both going to be complex cells with chat's going crazy. We're both complicated cells with instructions to make mitochondria. Of course, the banana has a chloroplast. We don't. But yeah, we're both eukaryotes, so we're both going to be complex cells, and are multicellular. So there's similarities. But of course, we did not come from bananas. Okay. The plant cell and the animal cell share a relative, but it's so far back, it's like billions of years back. But there is a common vanilla type eukaryotic cell that was neither plant or animal, and they split. And they went different directions. But that's kind of just to put into perspective. Things are... Yeah, exactly. So Purple Potato Cat makes a great point. Cells are very complex, so a lot of DNA is instructions on how to make a working complex cell, which is 100% correct. 100% correct. So in general, organisms with eukaryotes are very similar. Yes. So you'll see there are differences, but because like the cow and the canine, the dog, are both, you got to think about it this way, they're both mammals, they're both vertebrates, they're both going to be warm-blooded and give birth to live young. So there's lots of categories that they fall into that are all the same. The only difference is, of course, we stand on two legs and don't have fur, but we still share, like a cow still has a heart, a cow still has a brain, a cow still has lungs. So all the instructions to make the brain, to make the lungs, to make the circulatory, they're still going to have reproductive organs like us. They still have intestines like us, kidneys, all the basic organs that we share. They share all the same organs that we do. So they're very similar from like an internal organ standpoint. That's why we're able to, and this is kind of a tangent, but we'll go into it anyway. There are variations on each organ, yes, and that's what makes us different. But the basic idea, you're able to detoxify yourself by using a pig's liver in place of your own. It'll kill the pig, and this is still done today. But it'll kill the pig, but you can have their liver do like the heavy lifting for your liver to help people with like liver toxification. So the pig is similar enough to us that their liver will help filter our toxins, our poisons. But it's incredible. If you look at a cow liver and a human liver, it's like it got scaled up. You made it bigger. So it's actually pretty insane to think about. So it's just a coding for like how long does it stay in the oven? How long does it cook, if you will? Because basically things can get bigger as long as there's still the coding for it to keep increasing in size. And then at a certain point, the body says, or the DNA basically says, stop. you're done developing. So those switches are what makes us different, and a lot of different things too. But the switches are very important. So see Atomic, but we'll get into that in a second. We're gonna watch a little video. A video within a video, guys. Okay, so I don't know if this is going to get copyrighted or not, so I'm going to talk over it. But we've got 6% similarity to 6% similarity to bacteria. See the plants. We've got 25% back. This is a eukaryote now. Now we're really multicellular, so now we're more similar. I'm not sure how the apples got more similar, but I think it's incredible that you can have plants that are that similar to us. The fungi are more eukaryotes too. Yeah, I'm not sure what the cabbage is doing, guys. Spiders are more similar. Yeah, 55% mosquito. I've actually not watched this video before, so it's very, very interesting to me too. So now we're getting to, okay. So now we're getting to, so at the 60%, so this kind of tells you guys, about 60% of our DNA is all instructing cells on how to be cells. Is what this is telling me. Because when we get to 62%, now we're popping into, okay, a chicken's a vertebrate. A chicken is going to have a brain, 2 eyes. It's going to have lungs. It won't have teeth, but it has lungs, and it has a digestive system. So, and it's got basically, essentially, yes, you used half your DNA to basically make you not a plant, and make you more different than an insect. You missed a bunch, but it's good to have you back, Constantine. So now we're getting into more complex or bigger birds. Now we're back. Now we're into mammals. So at about 68%, now we're into the mammals, and then worm comes out of nowhere. Worm comes out of left field. That's crazy. But the pandas are 68% in common with us, which makes sense, right? Because they're gonna have fur. We have hair. Same body plan. Four legs. Gonna have ears. Yeah, we're 63% eagle. So, but we're gonna have, like I said, all the fundamentals are still there. 70% worm. I do not know how that works. That doesn't make sense. Now we're going backwards. So now this makes less sense. But this is also fair to say that sharing DNA doesn't make you related as far as similarities to the DNA. So because what can happen is you can have similarities that evolve separately. So as things evolve and become more they just have spent more time mutating, what can happen is you can have what's called, I think it's called convergent evolution, something like that, where there's two similar solutions to the same problem, but it uses two different ways to get there. So they both arise separately, and that's how we get these similarities that are crazy. Yeah, convergent and convergent and divergent. So the convergent is the crabs, correct. So many different things started out the way they were, and over time they became crab-like because it's just a body model that works. So like I say, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Or if pressures, if like going a certain route, evolutionarily speaking, wins you the battle, it's going to be a winning solution time and time again. So, like the dog canine body model, I believe there's a species of dog somewhere that evolved independently from other dogs other places. So that solution to make things like a dog, make things like four-legged with a long nose and teeth and fur with a tail, that body model was the solution that won, but it happened separately. Platypuses. Hold on, guys. I apologize. I'm going to have to hit the restroom really quick. I'll be right back. Give me like 30 seconds. You guys can keep chatting, but I might let this play out, actually, while I'm using the restroom, so that way you guys have content. But I'll be right back. Oh, I forgot my mic was turned off, guys. I'm sorry. No, I was talking about I'm sorry. I completely I completely forgot that my mic was turned off. No, I was talking about earlier the pig thing. So um that's how we're able to do those. That's how we're able to do those transfusions where you're able to detoxify yourself using a pig liver. Um that's why. So it's very they're very similar to us DNA wise, which is crazy. And they're domestically available. That's why we're able to use them. You could probably do it with a monkey too, but there'd be like some ethics concerns, which is really weird. People pick and choose their battles with ethics, but farm animal being used to save a human's life is fine, but someone like using a monkey to save a human's life, they're like, oh my gosh, you're killing the monkey. People just have like a hierarchy of people are having. Oh no, we gotta get off screen. My bad. All right, so hopefully YouTube does not get mad at me for using that video, but in a classroom setting, I'd use the video. So full screen, please. There we go. I gotta go back. No! Spoilers, guys. Hold on. Okay. Okay. So, tracking the genomes from different species and seeing how they relate to each other lends to the evidence of us having a shared ancestor. So, very true. So we have a shared ancestor somewhere in the past. Even though the branches of the mechanisms of evolution have branched life into different species, resulting in what you see today. So things branched off, and I wish I had a picture to show you, but there's like a diagram that shows you like the tree of life where all the branches are based on taxonomy. It's very intricate, but there's many branches. But so where things run in parallel to each other, evolution's pushing them towards a similar ending or a similar direction, but they're going about it individually and separately. Okay, so another reason, I am so sorry. Another reason we know that evolution is valid and true is Tiktaalik. I hope so, because I want to be a new teacher someday. So, using Tiktaalik as an example, we're going to go off the idea that we talked about earlier, which was descent with modification, if you remember. So we talk about descent with modification. So basically saying that, gosh, I'm thirsty. The coffee's killing me. Basically saying that the only way we get new traits is from mutation, which is slow. So we can only work with what we have from our ancestors and modify it to suit the environment and deal with the pressures put on us by natural selection, which we've talked about all those little guys before. One of the examples I want to use is limb formation. So, before I get ahead of myself, life came from the sea and moved on to land later. One of the first creatures, or the first creatures, only one first, that did this was more fish than reptile and used modified fins like primitive limbs to move on land. And that little guy is this little guy, Tiktaalik. So this guy is famous amongst scientists because we didn't know that he was there for a little while. And we found the fish fossil, and then not randomly, but somewhere along the line, time passes, and then boom, we've got these reptiles that have 4 legs, and they're walking around on land. So the scientists were like, there's gotta be a transition species. There's gotta be an in-between. Because at some point in time, life was coming from water to land because of where fossils are and how fossils are stacked. Basically. Because things are deposited and then things are deposited on top of that and on top of that. So you've got the older stuff's lower, deeper. Newer stuff's closer to the surface, right? So they're digging through, and you're at like 69 feet, for instance, let's say, which is not true. Don't take that as gospel. I'm just saying, I'm throwing a number out. So you say you're at 69 feet, or 72 feet or whatever, and you're finding all these fish, and then you dig up to like 65 feet, and there's nothing but four-limbed terrestrial little animals. Well, scientists were like, there's gotta be a transition. There's gotta be an in-between, because you can't just have one dam of fish and one dam of reptile. There's gotta be some kind of in-between. So they dug right in between the two areas, across the globe, of course, expecting and hoping to find an in-between. And lo and behold, they found one. So this little fellow is Tiktaalik. We know he's real because he's a fossil. There's fossil evidence of him. And it was found right before the first amphibians and right after basically the Cambrian explosion. So the Cambrian explosion is when fish life went kind of haywire and got really diverse really quickly. Forgive me, I'm getting a drink. Sorry. So, this guy was found at the right depth in between fish and reptiles and amphibians. So, they were able to basically predict to find something that they ended up finding, which is absolutely incredible. So we're gonna watch a little video. There actually probably should be a Tiktaalik plush. If there was, I would actually buy one. Tiktaalik is a adorable and wholesome little guy.
Tiktaalik's heavy-duty fin.
And I will say, if you don't know who this is, it's David Attenborough, and I absolutely love David Attenborough. He's the best narrator of our time.
Still helped it to swim. But if it hit the shallows, the bones and joints would help to push itself up and punt around.
Okay, so see what's happening? We've got the predecessor for limbs. So the fish have this bone here, and there's bones inside the fin. And because this fish had bones inside the fin that were more prominent than others, Potato Cat, please put that in Discord. I need to know. I probably need to get one. Please, if you when you have time. But so as you can see, it had more bones than other fish, so it was actually able to kind of basically evolutionarily jump forward. And it started the lineage of what essentially where reptiles and amphibians came from.
But this new limb didn't just help mobility in the water. It became the driving force behind one of the most spectacular events in evolutionary history. The arrival of the first vertebrate animals on land.
So, basically, people are probably going to wonder why go to land if the sea is just fine. Well, the thing about this ocean is during the Cretaceous period, or the Cambrian period, the Cambrian explosion, there's so much competition for resources. So they're limited, and you've got all this diversity. So one of the sorry, thank you, Chad, you made me laugh. So one of the individuals amongst this diverse group, I'm gonna have to look that up to Drew. I'm not sure. We'll find out. I want to say they're convergent, I think. But so one of the species was able to find a new niche. And niche, of course, is a role. It's a occupying a space for resources, occupying a space for food and land, literally land area. So it could either get outcompeted, or it could find a new place. And what it did was it found a new place. It was able to inhabit, pardon me, the land, and able to find new places to get food. So imagine, there's nothing but plants on land, and you're the only animal that has access to these plants. You have more food than you can ever use. Oh, they diverge. Okay, they're divergent. So one of the ones found a space inside of one of the niches. It basically created its own niche. So basically, it was able to find a new place, which is land, with more resources and no competition. There's no competition at this point in time. So it's perfect. It's able to survive and find more resources and mate. And the longer it was on land, it was able to become better and better and better slowly at being on land. And that's where we get our reptile ancestors and where we get our amphibian guys from. But see, he's not very good at getting on land. He's just more fish-like than anything, but he can do it. Okay. Back to my lesson. Okay. So, keeping in mind that we've got Tiktaalik as our common shared first land animal, we can see what nature derived further structures from. So I want you to pay attention to these patterns as you see them. And pardon me that I'm sorry this is blinding. So here we go. So you've got your fish ancestor. Bye, Tutoru. Thank you for watching the VOD. I appreciate it. So you've got your fish ancestor here with regular fins and not much bone. And then we've got this guy here who, through random chance mutation, had this bone structure that it was able to kind of just kick itself around on land a little bit to, after discovering the niche, it has ability to reproduce and survive. And it's like millions of generations later, you get more and more advanced limb type of deals. So you've got, in 10 million years, it was able to change this into this. And this guy right here is kind of where we derive our stuff from. And you'll see this, there's a pattern. You got one big bone here, two smaller bones, and then you've got a bunch of bones. And as you'll see, in this kind of life, in the dolphin, the porpoise, you see it, and even in birds and such. So this kind of tells us that these guys came along later. They weren't around. Or at least they followed similar ideas. Because see, you've got these flippers. If dolphins had no choice, possibly they could spend short stints on land. Because they have flippers with bones in them. But they would have to, there'd have to be something Jurassic that would have to happen. Not Jurassic, but Jurassic. But they are intelligent enough. They are intelligent enough. So, if they could, I think, I won't get ahead of myself. But I think they have lungs, because they do come to the air to surface to breathe. So, anyway. So they do have the 1 to 2 to many structure. And you see here, the second bone is really small, but you've got the 1, you've got the 2, and you have the many. So this shared body structure is copied, or not copied, but it's the same structure. It just gets modified. So our DNA sequence that makes us different from other things. There you go. So yeah, dolphins, if they were forced to do so, evolutionarily speaking, could, transition to land, if that's what the pressures that, the pressures of evolution like demanded. So the problem with dolphins doing that is that they're so good at their job. They're extremely streamlined, or they're fusile. What's the word? That's not the right word. Fusiform. They're fusiform, so they're very streamlined. So they're made to be hydrodynamic. They're very good in water. So theoretically, they could become good at land, but they're so evolved, they're perfect for their niche. So something crazy would have to happen in order for them to be, in order for them to have the pressure to move to land. But it could happen in a fantasy scenario. So if we're kind of being like what if scenarios, they could, and they're smart enough to. They have the intelligence. So, but here's some more examples, so you can see in the dog and the horse and the bat and the bird, we've got the one, and then there's two down here, and there's many down here. So it's the same kind of body pattern repeated over and over again, and that's what scientists see, and that's what they kind of leads us to believing, or not believing, but leads us to think that they came from a shared common ancestor. So, and they share these traits. Another way we know is through comparative embryology. So by studying, and we'll talk about this for a second, by studying developing things, so embryos, and I got pictures for you later, so we'll show you. But one of the last major ways we're able to know evolution is the best way of explaining where new species come from is through comparing the developing embryos of different species that share much of our own genetic code. So that sounds complicated, but the gist of it is, during it, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, but during development, an individual's DNA is in charge of the timing of certain key developmental events, and the order and the timing for how long they occur is kind of what determines what they're going to end up looking like. So, timing is critical. Any mistake in timing can lead to major birth defects and death of the embryo. Oh, this lecture's for high school. But, so when I talked about how the pig liver or the cow liver is like a bigger human liver, the development period for those organs is longer. So the switches in the DNA stay on for longer. And the code is what determines that. So the small percentage that makes us different is the percentage for timing and how long these switches are turned on for. Because if there weren't switches, you would just have, there'd be no end to development. Things would just develop forever. So you'd have like infinitely large, which is not possible, but infinitely large organ size. So there has to be a shutoff point. And the cow shutoff point is going to be, it's going to be longer in gestation. They're going to be, the organs are going to get larger for longer. So that's kind of what determines the sizes. But they're very similar looking because they are similar. So like I said, for different species, these events happen in different orders and different durations. So like the bone elongation period for, if I can go back, hold on. The bone elongation period for the bat is going to be longer in this phase than it is for us. So during the metacarpal development phase, these switches are going to be turned on for longer. So they're going to keep getting bigger, and then it's going to shut off. And then it's going to change to the end point phase. And that's going to keep going, and shut off. So, like you can see, during this phase, it's very short. It's not very big. So it goes, it stops. But for us, it goes and goes longer. So you can see the timing is different, and that the timing is what makes the difference. Because when these are developing is the most important time for determining the shape of what it's going to end up being. So you can kind of see that the bird has, it's similar-ish, but you've got hollow bones instead of regular bones. And that's also a coding thing. So, yep, think back to the comparative anatomy. Excuse me. Think back to the comparative anatomy slide. So I just showed you that again. And some of the parts of the bone are longer or shorter for different species. So that's how it is for the whole body. Different parts of the body are developed for different durations, and that's what makes things look different. And all that change, all that difference is all in the code. It's all in the DNA. So it's like you've got instructions for making a bone, instructions for making a brain, but they all have different timing settings put on them. And messing with the recipe is what changes the species. Essentially, that's like one way of looking at it. So, this might blow your mind too. So here's a bunch of different embryos from different species at different points in time. So if you see here, from the fish to the human, they all look pretty similar during the first, let's say, first 10 weeks. I don't know that figure 100%, so just kind of go with me. So for the first third of development, all these guys basically look the same. But what happens as it gets more developed, things start happening at different rates and for different durations of time. So you can see here, for the fish and the salamander, they're the most different. So they become more fusiform. They become more like streamlined. So as they develop, they become skinnier and longer. Whereas all these guys here that are all, and if you notice, they're all land vertebrates. They all kind of stay in the same shape, more or less. The chicken has like a really long eye period for development. They get big really quick, or really early in its development, I should say. But other than that, they're all pretty similar. And then at the final stage, you can see now they start to look like this. Like this starts to look like a person. This one kind of looks like a four-legged little critter. You can tell there's a tortoise's shell for the tortoise, but except for the very end, they're all kind of developing the same way. And that's why they're so similar in DNA. It's because, like I said earlier, it's the instructions for being multicellular. It's the instructions for having lungs, having a brain, having, a bilaterally symmetrical body, having, a nervous system and a spinal cord. All these different parts of the body are all coded for. The only part that's different is like how big they're gonna get, and then kind of like the shape of the actual like skull, and then like the shape of like the limbs and that kind of stuff is what really gets different. As far as like height and then like the other stuff that happens later, that's where things get different. But in the beginning, it's all kind of like the same blueprint, which is crazy. So, wrapping up. This is actually a really long lecture, so I apologize. But wrapping up, after being introduced to the concept of evolution and the key mechanics, how do you feel about the theory? So, from where you started, not being lectured about, to now, has your opinion changed on its validity? Does it seem more plausible? Or no? And keep in mind, I had to go super light on it, because in order to get this covered in one lecture, I had to really skim everything. So all these sections you can go way more in depth with, but I went really light. Like there are full classes that you can take at the college level that's a whole semester long that's just about evolution. And even that's not as far as it can go. It can go even further than that. So, I had to get real brief with it, but it was good though. So any of your previously held preconceptions or opinions been changed? And then please take note of what you knew before and what you know now, and how your knowledge has changed with more information. And then, if you're curious for more or want to know more, there's plenty of free resources online that can go deeper into detail on the subject on YouTube, and I do implore that you check them out if you desire to know more. So, there's a couple really good ones that are like an hour long as well, but it goes over like the evolution of life from start to finish, how things have changed, and then they talk about like each part in greater detail. But I'm glad to hear that you guys kind of already knew this stuff, which is good. But it is nice to know that you guys learned some new stuff too. What I was hoping for. So I will answer questions now. But if you're watching this after it's gone live, this is the end. So make sure to like the video if you like it, and share it with a friend, and subscribe if you want to see more videos, because we'll be making hopefully more of these in the future. But to us, our live viewers, you guys have anything you want to ask or talk about, let me know, and we'll stay on and we'll talk about it. But I've enjoyed lecturing, guys. I do apologize. Sometimes I get all tripped up on my words when I get nervous or excited. So if I rambled a bit, I apologize. All right, bye TCG. Bye TCG. Anybody else have any questions? I'll message you on Discord. Go ahead, Potato Cat. Go ahead. Purple Potato Cat. Sorry. Go ahead. Take your time. I'll stay live as long as people have questions. So, and we can do research together. Look stuff up. Ooh. No, I don't know of one, but I'm sure it's happened. Yeah, that can happen. Yeah, so, okay, for instance, if a species has, let's say, it is a fun question, I love that kind of stuff. Let's say you've got a species of insect in the forest that are a certain color because they're, that's like the habitat they're in. So okay, I'll give you an example. There were these moths that were white, and they're white because there are birch trees, and birch trees are white, so they blend in and they don't get eaten. What happens is that people come in during the industrial revolution, and they open up factories, and all the soot gets on the trees, and the trees get stained black from the soot. So you've got all these moths that are white hiding on black trees. So what happens is the birds and such, they eat the moths. So what could have happened there? Pardon me. What could have happened there is there's a potential for it to go extinct because it can't adapt fast enough to that rapid change in environment. So what did happen is that there were some moths that were naturally darker in pigment, and those were the only ones that made it. Everything else got wiped out. Yeah, it's a classic example. It's a great example. But had that not happened, or had there not been any moths, so let's say it's a small population with little diversity, and there wasn't any variation in the color of the moths, they were all the same color white, they'd be extinct. But that's the benefit of having a large population size, is that you can buffer from events like this. where a random trait can give you the advantage. So that's why the human race is so hardy when it comes to viruses and stuff. Is that some people are bound to have natural immunity. So we'll give you a video game example. In the Last of Us video game, Ellie has natural immunity to the plague, to the zombie virus, if you will, the zombie fungus, really, actually. But that's the benefit of having, and that was the same deal with the movie I Am Legend. One of the people had natural immunity, and that's true in real biology. Is that some things are going to be naturally immune, just because things are diverse. So, that's why we're able to survive naturally without using vaccines and such. But you want to use vaccines because we don't want to lose 90% of the global population to a virus, or 95% even, because what's going to happen is the ones that are immune are going to be from a certain place, probably, with a certain kind of background, and then all that's left is that. So we want to preserve our diversity, because it really is a evolutionary strength, to have that kind of spectrum of genes, spectrum of differences. I probably can't. I don't know enough about that game. I'm not as much of an expert, but you probably could. There does seem to be one core race of a creature. Fun fact about beetles is that a quarter of all species are actually beetles. So there are so many beetles that 1/4 of all species are beetle. Of everything. So yeah, there's a lot. It's kind of crazy. That's the kind of random trivia fact I know. But yeah, anybody else? TCG, I think he said. TCG is gone. Anybody new has questions about the lecture? I know it's over now, but you would destabilize a lot of niches. You would destabilize a lot of niches. What would happen? You'd create like a vacuum for a niche, and you'd probably have either invasive species take that niche, or you would create a vacuum for other animals to basically come into existence to fill the niche. So if the niche is left open for too long, something that's already here will occupy it, or things will adapt and change over time to fill that niche. So it won't stay empty forever. So you'd have other things that would do what beetles do. They may not look like beetles, but they're gonna fill the same void. Or other existing species are going to expand their niche and occupy it without any competition. So things are always looking to beat other things. So I'm showing only 2 people, so if you guys are all good, we'll end here. But have a good night, guys, and we will see you soon. I'll try to stream tomorrow morning if I can, but if not, please don't be upset. But we'll be back on Monday. I will be busy next week. I'll be busy next week, so I can probably stream next Monday and next Wednesday. I might stream Tuesday and Thursday, but I can't promise anything. I'm starting my observations, so I'm starting to get really busy, and I'll need time to do homework. So I may stream twice, Monday and Wednesday. We will see. So I'll keep you guys updated on my streaming schedule, my availability. So, but let's try to do Hollow Knight tomorrow morning if we have time. So we'll try NKG again. If that sounds good. That way we get a little Hollow Knight this week. That way I stay fresh, stay as contemporary. Not a problem, Constantine. It's all good. That's why we have VODs, man. But I will see you guys. Oh, I'll do my best. Alright, guys. We'll see you. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Share it with your friends. I'm glad you guys learned some stuff. I might be back on tonight, but I can't promise anything. Anybody else? I think everybody's gone. All right. Well, thanks for sticking to the end. Like I said, if you guys want to support me, I do have links to not Discord. I have links to my Patreon, where I'll try to make money to support myself and keep going as a YouTuber. And there's also links to the Streamlabs donation link in the channel bio. So if you guys would like to join that, you know where to find it. And I will see you guys in a video coming very soon. See ya.